Here we go to finish out the week for the Media Row podcast, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales with me, Justin Miller. We're going to have a fun show today. Brent Blum, of course, new gig with Iowa State and the NIL Collective. You know him from We Will Collective. Maybe you know him from his ESPN days as a play-by-play announcer. We'll talk about it all and even more. I'm so excited to have Brent on the show today because I see a lot of myself with Brent of someone who has just really tried to do just about everything in the sports world. And that's someone I look up to because I want to be like that. You know, I want to be able to understand the ins and outs of everything in the sports media world. And he has taken it to a different level, but a new gig for him that I want to dive into some backstories and have some fun to finish out this week. But before we get to our interview with Brent, of course, need to give a shout out to Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Great people, great food, even better community over there at Kelly's Little Nipper. Historic Kelly's Little Nipper. Follow them on social media to see all the great things they're doing. You have trivia throughout the week on Wednesday nights. This week, of course, you have live music as always on the weekends and all great action over there at the historic Kelly's Little Nipper. Go experience it for yourself at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. And when you do, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. So, Brent, first off, thank you so much for doing this for me. I've been trying to get you on the show here for a while, but it's your schedule. You're all over the place. And then, yeah.
I appreciate the time and thanks for your patience. Just trying to button up some other things, start some other things, and then also the 7 and the 5-year-old take too much of my attention as well. But that's the attention I like to give. So no, appreciate your patience and glad to catch up, Justin.
No, this will be fun. I've actually always looked up to because I knew Chris a little with KXNO. I didn't know you as much, but then hearing your story and kind of like the steps you took to where you got, I was like, oh, that's kind of what I want to do. Like, I want to be able to do just about everything.
The great thing, somebody told me when I was in college, it was the best advice I ever received, is they said, just say yes. There were times where in the days in the NIL world, I have no idea what I'm doing, quite candidly, because it's new. This is a
Yeah.
totally brand new space. But, just like when I was in college and I was nervous as heck to call an Iowa State football game on the student radio station for the first time. I still get the butterflies today when you're walking into a big meeting or trying to do an NIL deal or all of those things. But you get used to being uncomfortable, and I think that's really good advice for everybody. Just say yes and let life come to you.
You bring up, you're doing everything, the NIL world, the We Will Collective world, but you bring up that era where you were doing play-by-play. Do you still have that itch? Do you miss it?
I do 100%. In a perfect world, in my last job of my career, I would love to get back to just doing broadcasting, particularly radio. And I know radio is, it's a medium that's changed quite a bit, as you know, Justin.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I'm more comfortable professionally than when I'm calling a game. I mean, that is still the end all be all of all the things I've done. Even a high school game, there's just something about it of being there, calling play by play. It's what I always grew up wanting to do. It's still what I love to do the most. And hopefully, with this new position with Iowa State, for the past 3 years, I really couldn't be involved in the broadcasting, especially early in the NIL world, because since I was compensating the athletes, I could not be employed by any entity associated with Iowa State,
Yeah.
essentially. Now, those rules got relaxed, and so I was able to do a couple more things last year. But I would love in this new role, time uh, obviously is a factor to do the ESPN Plus games again, which I did for basketball, and then even filling in for John on the radio. I would love to do it. In fact, I found out, which I'm super pumped with, I got to be the sideline reporter in Dublin for the Iowa State Kansas State game. So
Oh, nice.
Ryan Harklaw has a big VP meeting with his day job, and so he couldn't make it over there, and so they went to the most athletic person. No, not really. So they went with me, and so I got to go. I got to do the sideline reporting for Dublin, which will be. I've never been to Europe, so it's gonna be really fun.
No, that's a hell of a gig right there. Talk
Yeah.
about, man, it'd be nice to call a high school game even. Hey, your first time back behind the mic, you're in
Yeah,
Dublin.
I got to remember how to do it. Like, okay, now don't freeze up on me now. I got to make sure the IFB still works and everything. But no, I'm excited to work with John and Eric again.
So it's funny because one of your biggest mentors early on is someone that I got to work with pretty closely the last few years when I was at iHeart was Mel Crippen.
Yes.
And that guy, I mean, he called me a few weeks ago just wanting to check in on everything. I love that guy. But what's your best Mel Crippen story?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that guy, I owe a lot to him and people don't even know. So actually, which again comes back to why I am a big believer in helping out the younger generation always. So honestly, if you're a younger aspiring broadcaster, I know Justin, you've reached out, like I will make time for you because people like Mel Crippen and John Walters made time for me. And so
Mhm.
I was an unpaid intern at KASI up there in Ames and really just kind of writing sports stories. I'd go and get some audio. I still remember vividly because I thought I'd be fired. I went to media day for the Wayne Morgan media day in October. This would have been October of '05, and I forgot to hit record on his press conference. And so it wasn't Mel, it was somebody else in the sports office, made me go to the basketball office and get my own interview because we needed audio for the nighttime sports at the time. And so it was a good hard lesson learned of, hey, you better do what you're told to do and follow up on those things. But Mel was always great. So Mel gave Chris Williams and I our first show on KASI. It was Sunday mornings from 10 to noon when we were seniors in college, which is crazy that anybody would do that, but he did. And it really jump started a lot for both of us. And Chris and I both owe Mel the world, along with, you talk about John Walters, Keith Murphy, Andy Fales, so many, Andy Garman, back in the day, so many good guys that looked out for us. And they really didn't need to do that. Randy Peterson,
Mhm.
Dave Sproul. I mean, I'll keep going here, but I'm a big believer in passing the torch, and it's so exciting to see people like you take this new medium and run with it because you guys are the future.
No, and like Mel has been someone that I've looked up to. I mean, the first time I met him, he made me feel at home.
Yes,
Like I
that's
knew nothing about KASI. It was a new position. I was like managing people, even though I was 20 years younger than everyone.
yeah.
So he made me feel right at home. And I wanted to hear your Mel Crippen
He,
story. But back to the story of, you forgetting to click record and having to go do it yourself one on one. Is that almost a blessing and a curse?
it
Because that
was.
sets you up even better of
I
like learning how to do those one on ones.
Yeah, it was one because I was, growing up, I didn't love confrontation, and so now my boss, and again, I'm unpaid by the way, but I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my unpaid position here. Um, But so he's like, no, go ask. And it was I think more so, and it was actually I think it was BJ Shaven at the time. It was BJ looking out for me, not necessarily. Now he wanted the audio for the sportscast, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But it was also a lesson because he knew that I had it in me to go out and do it and be better for it. And Wayne Morgan was awesome. He's like, what do you need? I'll give you all the time you want, and was super open. It ended up being an interview that I then used to when I applied for a job coming out of college that I used on my demo reel. So again, it's like I'm a big believer in things happen for a reason. So one of those deals of it happened for a reason. I was better for it. But at the time, man, I thought the world was ending. I thought that was it. This was, my career is over. I didn't hit record for Wade Morgan, and it was going to be the end of it. But no, it really good lesson for the only way to get better is to make mistakes. And I think sometimes, again, I'm talking to my kids. Sometimes we want to be perfect all the time, and it's good to learn. I mean, the only way you're going to get better is from failing,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember I had a very similar situation. Now, it wasn't for a radio station, it was more just for a class project, which I always, if there was a class saying, "Hey, you need to go out and find a story," I just made it about sports. Like I
Yep.
didn't really, I didn't really expand outside of that. But at Drake, they had lost two straight games, and they were bad games. Like the men's basketball team, I think had only scored like 45 points in both games.
Yep.
And I'm watching a practice, and Darren DeVries, I've never seen him look so frustrated at a practice. And I'm like, is it okay if I pull you for 5 minutes? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Gives me great answers. I go to click the camera off and realize I never turned it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to be like, Coach, I'm sorry, but can I just ask you two questions? And his face, I know he wanted to be like, what the hell are you
Yeah.
doing
What are
to
you
me
doing,
right
man?
now?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he gave me the 2 minutes. And I remember telling that story to Travis and multiple people, and they're like, oh, once you start getting to know newscasters, reporters, that's a very common story. And I thought he was just being nice. No, everybody has that I
Everybody has it.
forgot record
Yep.
story.
Absolutely. Oh, and then when I interned with John Walters then the following summer, and the very first story I did, I had to cover a girls' sub-state soccer game, and I didn't get the white balance right at all. Like, if this is, I don't even know if white balance is even a thing anymore. I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
shot with a camera in 10 years, but essentially it looked like everything was blown out. Like you couldn't recognize anything. So I bring him back to the station, and John Walters, who's the nicest human being alive, he's like, "No, we can work with this," even though fully aware you could not work with this at all. But he puts it on the news anyway. He threw me under the bus on the news. He goes, and our new intern Brent shot this one on the surface of the sun, and and here's the score. So he's like, none of it was usable, but he at least put it on there. Then threw me under the bus. It was a good lesson of always double check and always troubleshoot multiple times because you don't know what's going to happen.
But too, I mean, that says a thing about John's character and like you growing up and learning too of being able to not take yourself so seriously too. Like this is
100%.
sports.
100%. And that is a great, honestly, that's one of the things that I've had to remind myself a lot in the NIL era too is we're not solving, a debilitating disease here. We're working with college athletes
Yeah.
for people's entertainment. It gets stressful, and there's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of ego and all sorts of stuff. But at the end of the day, this should be fun, and we've really, at Iowa State wanted to keep it more about having fun and giving back in a way because, here in the state, these are professional athletes, for good. It's a good thing. Like everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh, professional. But no, they have a huge influence on our younger people in particular. And, if the more we get them out in the community doing fun things, even if it's with companies, which is great, because that means support for the people that are going to be our icons for our state going forward. I mean, if you think about a Tyrese Halliburton, a Caitlin Clark, a Zach Johnson, a George Kittle, all these, they all started in college. And now look at how they carry the banner of the state of Iowa with them. Well, the more of those we can create, the better it's going to be for our state. And I think sometimes we have this look of, oh my gosh, Athlete X is getting so much money. How dare they? Rather than look, if we cultivate this, if we invest in this, we can develop some really long time people like another Caitlin Clark. Now, you won't have another Caitlin Clark. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But there is so much, Brock Purdy, another example. There's so much that can come from developing our own here in the state that go on to do bigger things. And then those folks will invest back. And it's a win for everybody in a state that, we're not one of those big states, high population professional sports states. So let's take advantage of what we do have.
Yeah. I mean, we're not Georgia and Alabama, any of those
And
SEC
that's
type
okay.
schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
But I think now in this NIL world, we're learning it's balancing that out where states like Iowa can have more opportunities and those athletes can get better opportunities.
100%. And that's why, what I always encourage when I meet with companies is, I'll say, hey, what would happen if Major League Baseball or the NBA would move to Des Moines? And they'd be like, oh my, we'd be all over that. Like we would get a suite, we get all these
Hmm.
things, we'd invest in group tickets and do sponsorships. And then I'll say, well, did you know college football is the second biggest money generator in the country, right behind the NFL? College football is bigger than Major League Baseball. It's bigger than the NBA. It's bigger than the NHL. It is a monster. And we have two huge, massive programs in our state that honestly, they need that type of support, just like you would for an NBA or an MLB team if they were in Des Moines, because that's what the competition is doing. And so when you frame it like that and you think of the quality of life that our college sports bring, Drake, you and I included, how fun was it when Drake's in the NCAA tournament? I mean, you can't put a price on that. Yes, I know there is a cost, and it costs money to keep coaches, players, etc. But the quality of life that it brings to our area, how much more vibrant is Des Moines when Drake and Iowa State are good at basketball? I mean, it's just so much different. Even,
Yeah.
news business, all of it combined. And so the investment isn't necessarily an, oh, I'm paying the quarterback. It's I'm investing in our state by investing in something that people care about in our state. And if you frame it that way, I think it's a lot easier for individuals and companies in particular to say, I get it. I get it. We need to keep our programs healthy so then our employees stay happy and stay here in Iowa. Because quite frankly, Justin, what's a big reason you and I are probably still here is because there's high level Division I sports in Iowa.
Yeah.
I think I don't think that's a mystery. Now, maybe we have misplaced priorities, perhaps, but quality of life and entertainment matter. And so
Hmm.
let's, just like we invest in the Civic Center and we invest in Wells, I guess now the Casey Center, all those things for concerts, it's the same thing with our college sports programs. Now it has changed. I get it. And we didn't used to have to ask everybody for more, but to stay competitive and to keep these programs here, things have to change a little bit.
So you've been with the We Will Collective for the past 3 years, right?
Yep.
And then now, what's the, for the listeners who may not know, what's the new gig now since there's been changes in the college landscape once again?
Yeah, from the outside looking in, it's not a whole lot different from my day to day. It's just essentially I'm now working for the official Iowa State umbrella through Learfield. So, Justin, you know what Learfield is.
Hmm.
They're the multimedia rights partner for all these schools. And so essentially, these schools outsource their corporate sales to Learfield so they don't have to have an internal corporate sales team. They then go out and sell for the Cyclone Radio Network. They sell for signage in Jack Trice Stadium. That Mid-American Energy field, that is a part in conjunction with Learfield. So they pay Learfield in order to be the rights holder and on and on and on. And so my role is kind of a halfway in between. I'll be working with Iowa State because now they can take NIL dollars directly as these schools now have up to in year number one, 20.5 million to spend on student athletes. So Iowa State needs to raise those dollars. But then also they hope to fill up the other bucket in that revenue pot, which is through the corporate sponsorship angle. So as a perfect example, now if we go to Hy-Vee, Hy-Vee spending X amount of dollars with Iowa State. Hey, Hy-Vee, for an extra 50,000, make up a number, you can now have access to all these Iowa State players' NIL rights for use in their commercials, for their appearances at the store, for an autograph session, on and on and on. So it's a value add for the companies, but ultimately it helps Iowa State reach that revenue sharing amount that they're trying to find because it really was for all these schools a $21 million line item on their budget.
Hmm.
They didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for. And so that's kind of my charge is to help fill up that bucket both through corporate and then donors as well.
So I remember, I wish I could remember what show it was on, but you were a guest on KXNO one time, and you're mentioning how when you took over the We Will Collective, like this wasn't the end goal. Like the end goal was kind of, and I'm paraphrasing
Yeah,
here, of
nope,
that
you're right.
you wouldn't have to be there, like that you wouldn't have to be doing a collective. Is this a step forward
It
into that
is.
direction?
100%. So I think the goal here, and this isn't we're not there yet.
Mhm.
This is a what I say is a band-aid for a big flesh wound, and ultimately it's going to take the courts and probably the government to actually solve it. In which we, not my decision, but college sports has now delegated solving this crisis in college athletics to the courts and Congress. They can't do it themselves anymore. It's over. Like they have lost because the courts are already involved. You know all that. But this is
Mhm.
a step to at least try and rein in the rules on collectives. I think it's great for the sport, but already even today, there you have these collectives who don't want to go away because those people will lose their jobs, and not to mention those SEC schools, which is mainly in the Big Ten, who's really fighting against this, they'll lose their advantage as well. Because, if the collectives can't exist, then they're talking about 15, 20, $25 million that is taken off from these schools that, it's a little different for them because they're making so much more in revenue from their school that all of their money they bring in there from collectives can be an add-on, which is different from ours, where Iowa State needs our collective money to help fill in that bucket, not for put money over the top of that bucket, essentially. So, yes, we've made a step as of July 1, but nobody knows for sure what the end goal is, the end game is. I do think we will have to get at some point in college athletics collective bargaining with the athletes directly. The issue with that is then you have to say their employees, which brings in a host of other legal matters such as, employment contracts, insurance issues, labor issues. Can they only do 40 hours a week? Like, do they get overtime? You bring in a whole host of things, and you know as well as I do, the cross country runners' hours are way different than the football players' hours and
Exactly.
responsibilities. So how do you put them under the same employee pyramid? You don't. Each sport almost needs to collectively bargain. It's just a big mess. And then, Drake's different than Georgia. So
Yep.
how are they governed by the same rules? And it's just really, really difficult right now. You're trying to squeeze all these entities under the same set of guidelines, and they don't really apply. But yet we also can't do it. We can't even make rules anymore because then they'll get challenged in the court. And then so ultimately it's going to be the courts and Congress that decide a lot of this. And we're just kind of reacting week by week as these rules change.
Yeah, and talking about reacting week by week, has there been any early hurdles and how are you preparing for those hurdles? How are
Yeah.
you taking on those hurdles?
Well, it's still a mess, quite frankly. So this clearinghouse that they set up, this NIL Go clearinghouse, which essentially the school can pay up to X amount of dollars, and then any NIL above that has to go through a clearinghouse to make sure it's not just a booster just handing over $100,000 to do nothing. These NIL deals going forward through the clearinghouse have to have actual business purpose, is the quote. The problem is already that clearinghouse is backed up. It takes 3 weeks to even get a yes or a no on even a $2,000 NIL deal right now. So they're already way backed up. And not to mention, there's already people challenging, hey, no, that one got denied, but really it should be approved. And so the system, it was spun up really quickly. It's not been efficient at all. And now you got all these people upset because they're like, well, I need to know an answer. Am I getting paid or not? But then the coaches are like, what do we tell recruits? Because what schools are doing now, Justin, is they're going to say, hey, player X, you're going to get 100,000 from the school in rev share, but we'll find another 100,000 in actual NIL for you. So they're promising, and we're not doing this at Iowa State, but I'm saying this is what the big schools are doing.
Hmm.
So now it's up to them to find that 100,000, but this clearinghouse is so backed up that they can't get anything approved yet. And so it's going to put everybody in this weird thing of, well, you promised me this, but I don't have the money yet. And will it ever get approved? Will it go through or not? And so we've replaced a confusing set of non-rules with a confusing set of rules that's making things even more difficult to navigate. So it's certainly every day is a little bit different, and it's certainly not efficient quite yet.
Is and you talked about, how there's this huge big flesh wound. They're just putting band-aids on it. What is the next big change that needs to happen that is realistic? Because
Really,
I know
yeah,
the one that you mentioned earlier, that's like in
that's a 15.
5 to 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you got it. I would say watch for two things. The courts will have a say here shortly on will this clearinghouse stand up? That's the biggest short-term thing because if they say no, this whole business purpose thing is illegal, then the collectives get right back in the game, and now we're back to square one where we were last year, like immediately. Because then the collectives will just say, no, we're a business and we can pay them too. And then we're back at it where you've got, honestly, like a Texas spent probably $55 million in NIL last year, and at Iowa State we did five, and we're playing the same sport.
Yeah.
So that's number one. So that'll come hopefully the next couple of weeks. At least know will this thing actually hold up. But on the second part of that is the schools are trying to get to Congress to get an antitrust exemption passed, potentially here by the end of the year, which will prevent those lawsuits from even happening. So you've got what I would say is the old traditional guard using Congress as leverage to try and pass a bill to avoid the courts from getting involved. And you've got the newer guard, which are called the progressive athletes' right arm, saying, no, 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 you can't cap wages. That's illegal. That's a monopoly. And so, one way or another, I think that'll get solved in the next 6 months and it will dictate what steps we have to do beyond that. It's interesting if you would ask an athlete. I had a really good conversation this morning with an Olympic sport coach at Iowa State, and they're the ones that are getting penalized the most. Of all this stuff,
Really?
I know, yeah, because the football players and the basketball players, by them getting more, these schools don't have unlimited resources. Somebody is getting taken away from it. You know who it's going to be? It's going to be those Olympic sport athletes. If this continues at the same rate, and we don't have a salary cap in essence, which the attorneys don't want a salary cap because then they're going to lose, and there's agents are going to lose their
Mhm.
commissions. That money's coming from somewhere. And going to be honest, the college football and basketball coaches aren't taking a pay cut. So where's it going to come from? The other sports. And so we're actually probably going to hurt the other 90% of athletes on college campuses by pushing NIL on the top 10%. And I think that's the unintended consequence that nobody really sees. But you're already seeing these coaches feel squeezed because they're already losing support from because the schools have to pay the athletes now. And so it just makes it a really tough situation, even on campuses of program versus program of who gets what.
And then you've set up yourself though with a great team for success, including someone that I know, Mary Kate Walling,
Yes.
is on your team, and
Yes.
John Walling. I actually work with him part time. So,
That's oh,
John, I
Coach
love
Wallen is the
John.
best. He's an all-timer. No, so this is the great thing is I was working, really it's me and my wife was a very partial contract employee, but now I have a team around me. I get around be around people every day, which is great. So we're trying to basically be a one-stop shop for NIL. So now when a corporation comes to Iowa State and says we want Taman Lipsey in an NIL deal. We've got the business side, the contract side with me and Jake, who's going to be my, kind of my contract director, and then Mary Kate with her multimedia background will actually, with the Iowa State media team, be able to film the content right there. And so we're essentially, instead of having to go to an ad agency and film all that stuff, we can do it all within the Iowa State house and do a lot of those fun NIL things quicker and more efficient and utilize everything. And so we've got talks of, building some content studios and other things at Iowa State as this thing progresses, but essentially giving these athletes all the tools they can to get NIL and take advantage of those companies who want to invest in Iowa State.
Was it like, I mean, I'm a big movies guy, so I just assume everything happens like how it does on, the big screen. Was it like at those 80 movies where you walk into a room and you're like, I'm setting up a team, and then you do a cool handshake?
I wish it was okay. Let's make sure you pass the background check first. Yeah, do our compliance level. Yeah, what are your previous employers? Let's go. It wasn't that. It was. This has been in the works for. I know the announcement was kind of sudden, but we've been kind of building on this, knowing this was coming for the last 6 months or so. So it's been fun to see it come together and get to work with a lot of great people and I just hope people realize that we're all trying to do our best for Iowa State. I know we don't have as much as some of our brethren in the SEC and the Big Ten, but this has been a great 4 years for Iowa State in the NIL era. And so why not keep proving people wrong and keep doing it our way?
Well, sweet. Well, Brent, thank you again so much for doing this for me. I know your schedule's all over the place, so I
Yeah.
appreciate you making time for me. It was great.
Yeah, reach out anytime. And again, appreciate your effort here and your hustle and keep doing the thing and please keep in touch.
Will do. You have a great weekend. Have a good one.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate you, man.
Yep. See ya. A thank you to Brent Blum for coming on the show here today. I've been wanting to get Brent on as long as I can remember, so it was awesome that we're able to get our schedules to match out and be able to get him on. It was kind of a Cyclones week, which is a little unique for this show, but I love doing it. I want to try to get more Iowa connections as well, but of course, that is something that is going to build and take some time, but we will get it because I know on this show I am a Missouri Valley, a Drake guy. But I want to try to get as much local sports involved in this show as possible as well. So continue to like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that great stuff. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, keep them coming. I love seeing it, but I love the connection that we are building with the listeners and viewers. I appreciate all of your guys' support, so keep it coming. Reminder, on Monday, no show. Of course, another short week, but we will get back on track, of course, here soon. It's just that time of the year where a lot of things are happening, a lot of trips, a lot of vacations, but I hope you guys are taking some personal time for yourself as well. Before we wrap up, need to give a shout outs to Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated here in the state. They're loyal people. They communicate effectively. And my favorite, there's no BS. So they're the perfect place to go for yourself, maybe for your kids as they are starting to get to that age of getting on the road. My parents did it with me and my brother. It's the perfect place. They are great people. You do not spend 35 years in this state unless you've built a connection with your customers, and that's what they've done above and beyond. Go to Stevens Automotive and Sales, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa, and when you do, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. thank you guys again for tuning in this week. Another short week coming up, but we'll get back on track with more great action here on the Media Row podcast.